Hi, everyone. My name is Zen Honeycutt of Moms Across America. This is an April 6th, Monday night Moms Connect call. And our mission at Moms Across America is to educate and empower mothers and others with actions and solutions to create healthy communities. And I'm very glad to have some excellent guests on today. We first have, I'm going to screen share so you can see you won't be able to see his phone when he's on the phone, so you won't be able to see his face, but you can see him here. Professor Trevor Marshall, who has a background in engineering, computers, clinical medicine, and molecular biology as well. He's the director of the Autoimmunity Research Foundation, a fellow of the European Association for Predictive, Preventative, and Personalized Medicine from Brussels, a member of the International Expert Council Community of Practice, Preventative Medicine from Moscow, formerly an adjunct professor at the Faculty of Sciences from Murdoch University in Western Australia, and a past chair of the Engineering and Medicine and Biology Society of the Ventura IEEE, which I don't know what that is. But he's clearly very experienced and knowledgeable, and I'm very glad. Thank you, Dr. Marshall, for taking your time to be with us tonight. This call is being recorded. The chat box is also, just FYI, recorded, and if you put anything in there to a private person, I just found out today because of all the security issues around Zoom, everybody can view it. So there's nothing really private on Zoom in the chat box, just FYI. And it is being recorded. And if you ask a question and I unmute you, the sound will go to you. Now, just some housekeeping things. We did have some trolls last week. Everybody has had trolls on Zoom apparently. I will do the best I can to mute them as soon as possible. Please bear with me if that happens again. And hopefully not. But you can see here, this is the background that Dr. Trevor Marshall has. And I'm going to just screen share. This is his website, mpkb.org. This is the Marshall Protocol Knowledge Base. And this is where he addresses many different kinds of protocols that you can use and doctors can use to address autoimmune issues. So he really has a very extensive background, and I'm really very glad that you could be on here with us, Dr. Marshall. So please, today, please share with us. We'd like to distinguish, first of all, we're gonna have Dr. Trevor Marshall, and then we also have Mark Graham, who's an activist from Elk Grove, California, who got one of the best ordinances done, and he will explain a little bit about that, and he will also talk about 5G and schools and how to approach your school board. So this is going to be a very useful call, and I appreciate everybody being on. And once again, if you do have a question, you can put it in the chat box. But from what I can tell right now, I have to stop screen sharing in order to see the questions. So please don't mind me if I don't answer your question right away. I'm going to come back to the questions once I stop screen sharing, okay? So Dr. Marshall, please tell us, we want to know, what is the difference between these small cell, 4G, 5G facilities and the Starlink satellites that are going up? What is the main difference? What should we be aware of? How should we be able to communicate? What is it that we need to be able to communicate to our city council members and school board? The information about how do we talk about this? It's so complicated for us. Can you please break this down for us a little bit?
Okay, the big difference, firstly, the website that you're looking at, mpkb.org, is actually a patient wiki, which is run by the many hundreds of patients that have recovered using the discoveries I made when I went back to molecular biology. But the other websites that are quote-unquote mine, I guess, is trevormarshall.com.
Yep. Okay.
Is basically my papers, and then marshallprotocol.org is the site where we coordinate the clinical tracking of the patients that have been following the MPKB stuff, and there are a few other websites out there as well, but basically trevormarshall.com is the main one.
Okay.
Anyway, and it's got a picture of me on it. Oh, it's probably got I don't know what MPKB's got on it, to be honest, because I haven't looked at it for so long. The patients maintain that, the moderators. Anyway, good to talk to you, Zen, and the others. Well, you just asked me a question, which is a very complex one. But look, the simple answer I'll give you is that the big difference between the 4G, 5G small cells and the satellites is that one of them is sitting at the end of your driveway and one of them is sitting 350 miles away. The one that's 350 miles away, there's actually more than one of them. There is approximately, going to be upwards of 10,000, currently about 400 if I'm counting correctly. But it's 350 miles away. And that's the key, because when waves move through the air, or indeed through space, they dissipate because they're getting larger. The wave front is getting larger all the time. And the intensity of the waves, the energy in those waves, drops as they travel from the transmitter towards you. And they drop as the square of the distance. So let me give you an example. If you've got a cell tower sitting half a mile away from you, which is probably about average for the typical city these days, then that's, let's say, 3,000 feet to make it for simple mathematics. And then you've got a 30-foot pole at the end of your driveway with a small cell on it, so that you're only 30 feet away from the antenna when you are playing on your lawn, front lawn, or doing front gardening. Then one is 3,000 feet away and one is 30 feet away. The new small cells are 30 feet away. And so that's 100 times closer in distance than what we have installed at this point in time in most of our Californian cities anyway. And that means that there's 10,000 times difference in the power that is received by somebody playing on your front lawn from that tower 30 feet away instead of 3,000 feet away. And 10,000 is a fairly reasonable difference in power. You're going to notice that.
So can I interrupt? So by notice that, you're going to feel a difference, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, 30 feet away, even a Wi-Fi access point is relatively quite strong. It's putting radiation out above the level that has been proven to affect human biology. So even 30 feet away, a tiny little Wi-Fi access point, but the device they're putting at the end of your driveway is at least 1,000 times stronger than a typical Wi-Fi access point. And in many cases is about 1/10 the power of the cell tower that's half a mile away. So that means the signal that's hitting you from the small cell that's close and low power, 1/10 the power of the main transmitters, is still 1,000 times stronger than that one half a mile away. And that's the big danger, the very big danger in the small cells. The signal is so strong because you are that much closer to the antenna. And they're still using the huge radios, the huge radio transmitters, whereas in fact all they need is a pizza box with a Wi-Fi access point in it, and less than that actually. Even that is more than you need in a typical residential street.
So just to interrupt you for 1 second, can you see the screen? No, because you're on the phone, right?
No, I'm on the phone.
Okay.
I can't see the stream because I don't have the software loaded on the computer.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. So I just want to interrupt you for a second and explain to the viewers what they're seeing right now. This is from momsacrossamerica.org. It's on the action page under Stop 5G Grids, and the tab is under Ordinances. And this radio frequency electromagnetic microwave radiation exposures is a chart showing how the power output scale, right? So you can see 1 is at the 5 bars on a cell phone. It's actually 0.002, and I believe they use microwatts here as a measurement. I know you like to use dBMs, which is negative 85 dBm. And then what it shows that what is able to be put out, the FCC maximum permissible RF EMR exposure guidelines is 5 billion times more than what we need for 5 bars on a cell phone. So that is what could be radiating out of a small cell facility 12 feet from your house. That is what the chart here shows. Okay. And you can see in between there all the different human harms that have been recorded. There's thousands of scientific studies that have been shown to be, as a result of microwave radiation or radio frequency radiation output. So this chart is showing that. Okay, go ahead.
Right. The thing is that some people are more sensitive than others, and therefore it's very difficult to get a study that can be replicated, that somebody else can come along, do the same study and say, yes, we get the same results, we agree with you. And that is required to be a gold standard in medicine for no other reason than this current generation of medical scientists decided that it should be. It wasn't the gold standard when I went into medicine, and it certainly hasn't historically been so. We discovered antibiotics by looking at mold in a dish, by an individual scientist looking at mold in a dish and noticing that it seemed as though there weren't bacterial colonies growing in the mold. So, that was, just before the Second World War. Sorry, I just tried to transition to my next thought, and I didn't do very well.
That's okay. You're explaining the difference in power.
I'm explaining that. I was trying to explain that. I was trying to come to the conclusion that science at the moment is broken, totally and absolutely broken, medical science. You might have noticed that the associations that I have with medical and medical universities is associated with how we can change things to make it work again, so that we can make discoveries that are actually useful to patients. And that's what I've been focused on for the last at least 20 years, in fact, right back to when I crossed over from engineering in 78 or so. So it's broken, and you can't replicate studies very well when everybody is a little bit different. And everybody is a little bit different in their response to radio waves. Some might be more affected by radio waves from satellites, and some might be more affected by radio waves from 4G transmitters, and some are affected even by FM radio stations that are on top of the hills above your town. So all radio waves, all radiation, electromagnetic radiation, does interact with biology, and whether your body has the ability to repair the damage that's done and to cope with the changes to the neuronal signals, the neural damage, really determines how you're going to be affected by the radiation. And there is a huge variation in the radiation we're coming across as well. You asked me to talk about what the difference is between 4G and the satellites. There is another difference between various types of radiation. You all know that what we see as light is electromagnetic radiation of a group of bandwidths, a group of frequencies, which we have organs called eyes that can differentiate into various shades of color and light and use them for vision. There's also infrared light, which we can't see with our eyes. We need cameras and measuring instruments. And there's ultraviolet as well, which is more energy, a higher frequency, more energy, and it can burn us even when we can't really see it with our eyes. And then beyond that, we've got the X-rays, gamma rays, etc., which are very short wavelength electromagnetic radiation. But the units of energy in all the cases is the photon. There is a single particle called the photon. Then whether it's a photon of light or a photon of shorter wavelength, higher energy, such as the X-rays, or a longer wavelength like the FM radio station, for example, on your hill, will determine how it interacts with the biological system that it's moving through. So in the case of FM radio, well, obviously, you know, light has got a fairly small wavelength and can be focused with a lens, as you do with every one of your flashlights. And when you're using the gamma rays that they use in surgery, the wavelength is very small indeed, and they're very, very precise in their ability to work selectively on tissue underneath microscopes. But when you get out to FM radio, much lower frequencies, much longer wavelengths, down at about 100 megahertz, that's a wavelength of about 3 meters, and that means it interacts with the body in a very different way. The whole of the wave that's moving through the air, in fact, extends beyond the body, so the body can fit fully within the wave that's moving through the air, and it's that wave, therefore, is more likely to affect the way our brain thinks, with its longer connections and its larger scale nerves, etc., than it is to dissect tiny little cells and tumors and stuff that the X-rays and gamma rays are used for or interact with. And then when you get out to AM radio, you're running at wavelengths around 200 or 300 meters. That's 200 or 300 yards, which is awfully long. Now, those AM radio signals are not really blocked by anything. They can go right around houses, and they can go right around most hills as well, because the waves are so large, and they interact with the body in different ways, mainly with the brain at that type of frequency. So the waves are different. Now, what's happening now is we're going from the microwave region, which is where the first cell phones were introduced, in the region below 10 gigahertz, between 700 megahertz and 10 gigahertz. We're now going into the millimeter wave region above 10 gigahertz, and every wave from the satellite is going to be very short, very small, higher frequency and higher energy. And the Starlink satellites are going to use frequencies from around 10 gigahertz up to around 40 gigahertz to take signals up and down from the ground station. The ground station having an antenna the size of a pizza box, nominally, and small equipment commensurate with that. And the pizza box size antenna is capable of focusing the waves into a beam like a lens in a flashlight does, so that the waves become stronger as well as they're focused down to a point, just like with the flashlight. And so the antenna is radiating up at the satellite with a fairly directional antenna. Most of the signal at least 99% of the signal will be focused to go straight towards the satellite and within a 16-degree cone towards the heavens. So flying in plane.
Can I interrupt one thing? So does that mean a satellite is going to be beaming down beams to many different antenna, or is there one satellite up there?
Yes, one antenna and one transmitter on the satellite will be beaming at a number of stations at once.
Okay.
We don't have the total data yet on how many, but it'll be quite a number, probably 100 or more. So it's sort of like a little Wi-Fi node in a way, and it'll just be dealing with that group of stations, and then as the satellite moves across the sky, the stations will transition from one satellite to the next.
So as the satellite orbits around the Earth, it will be talking to different antenna, which are these pizza box shaped things that are all over the Earth. Okay, I see.
Yep. If you're picking your internet off the Starlink, then you'll be talking with a satellite that will be moving around the Earth, and then after 20 minutes or so, your equipment will automatically transition to a different satellite. It's much more complex than that. You'll be probably working 3 or 4 satellites at once to try and get to the best bandwidth and sharing and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
But that's the tech boss's job.
Do we have any data about what happens to a bee or a bird or a butterfly when they fly through these beams?
No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever, and the insects particularly are going to absorb more of the millimeter waves because their body is closer to the wavelength. It's sort of like us in an FM radio signal. We've got a 3-meter FM radio signal, so it's going to start affecting us at the minute level, but it's still big. If you're a bee at the moment, the waves are big to you. With the millimeter waves, the bee actually becomes similar in size to the waves, and they're going to behave differently and excite molecules inside the bee differently than the way they do now. The new bands that are not even millimeter wave are already killing bees. I'm sure you've seen the videos that are out there and photographs of bees falling dead out of the sky when they go too close to standard 4G towers.
Okay, I'm sharing the chart you showed me now, by the way, about the power density. So I know you're not exactly talking about that right now, but
no, let's talk about that, because what that power density chart shows is it's taken on a study that looked at people living around a cell tower, an isolated cell tower, so that they could know that it was just one tower that was creating this extra symptoms, extra disease, and compared it with a almost identical community that hadn't had a cell tower installed. It's a slightly older study, about 2000, I think, in Santini. So it was only 2G, not 3G or 4G, which are more bioactive. But what they find was when you get within 100 meters, which is closest to the cell tower, that's to the top of the image. When you get within 100 meters of the tower, you find that the bars are all fairly tall, which means that statistically, those illnesses that are listed on the chart, you see there's a whole lot of illnesses both on the top and bottom of the chart.
Yes, we do.
You're right. So those illnesses correspond with the bars, and the height of the bars corresponds with the frequency, with the often with the occurrence of those illnesses.
Okay.
So when you get closer to the tower, it's not surprising the illnesses get more intense. More illnesses are found closer to the tower, and they're more intense. But the furthest bar away is still only 300 yards away from the tower, 300 meters, 300 yards away from the tower. And in order to get to a point where you can no longer detect any statistical difference between the two communities, one with a tower, one without a tower, you have to get out to about 1,000 meters, 3,000 feet that I was talking about before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I saw an image, or actually it was Cindy Russell, who's from Physicians for Safe Technology, who said that within 2 kilometers, children in South Korea were experiencing significant increase in leukemia. 2 kilometers from an AM radio station. So even 2 kilometers is still of danger to young children, and can be connected to that. So, and you're seeing from this chart, childhood leukemia, of course, it doesn't look about the distance. Maybe it's very close to, if they're close to a tower, they're going to have a much higher occurrence of childhood leukemia. That's what this chart is showing, right?
Yes, they're going to have a higher occurrence if the bar is taller. Yeah.
So what I'm getting,
there's two things that are important from the chart. Okay. The first thing are the actual list of things that are being affected, because it ranges everywhere from sleep disturbance through to cancers, brain cancer. So, I mean, no, this is a big deal. Waves affect lots of different people in lots of different ways. And that's something that's very hard for medicine to get its mind around. Medicine is still thinking primarily in terms of cancers, and yet 30% of the population, according to a paper a month or two ago, as much as 30% of the population are having sleep disturbances from the build-out that's already there, the 4G build-out in the cities. If I think back to what we used to watch on TV 20 or 30 years ago, there were never these ads for Lunesta with the little butterfly floating around. Lunesta didn't exist. It certainly wasn't part of our consciousness, and now it has had to be pushed, pretty heavily. The drugs have to be pushed pretty heavily, and most people are on a drug for blood pressure or sleep disorder or something like that, that is probably at least partly due to the RF environment that person has to endure during the day, and particularly during sleep at night. Getting a quiet night's sleep is most important. Right. So
we have a question about low Earth satellites versus satellites that are further away. So we're clear, everybody's clear that the 5G, the 4/5G satellites, the macro towers, cell towers, not a good thing to live near, not a good thing to have near school. We're completely clear about that. We're working on getting those away. Now the satellites is what we're curious about, because you said the differences between one's at the end of your driveway and one's 350 miles away. It sounds to me like the satellite beaming this power down to this antenna is not quite as much of a threat, because the power is going to decrease by the time it gets to this little pizza box thing. But my question is, and we'll get to the low satellite thing first. The question is, once it gets to that antenna on the ground, this pizza box shaped thing that you said, are they getting that power with cables to our schools and our houses, or are they going to be beaming it with antennas to our homes? And what type of power level will that be?
Well, the answer is we just don't know. When Google started its balloons some 5 years ago now, Google always sent down the signal from the balloons to an antenna, typical pizza box antenna, size antenna, and then that went into Ethernet cable into the buildings. So there was an antenna on the roof, and then the cable went into the buildings.
So it can be transferred through cables.
It can be transported through cables.
Okay.
And then when it's inside the dwelling, it can be either continuously transported through the cables, or if people want to connect it to refrigerators or that sort of device, they can devise other ways of doing that are less harmful to the population in general. Certainly will be harmful to the people in the house, but less harmful to the population in general.
Okay.
The big problem we have now is that we're all being affected by the radiation from 4G, 5G. Now, what is the difference in strength? Well, you said, you gave the figure of minus 85 dBm. So let me just drop some numbers and then explain what they are. So minus 85 dBm is roughly the level at which your cell phone gets 5 bars and you'll get a perfectly clear cell phone signal. And then minus 45 dBm is the level at which signals become unsafe. And you will find very few places in the cities in Los Angeles or Ventura County that are that low. Most of them are higher, typically as high as, well, in the new small cells that have been put along our roads. I was going down Sepulveda Boulevard the other week, and it was up at around minus 6 dBm. Now, the difference between minus 6 dBm and minus 85 dBm is approximately 80 dBm. And 80 dBm is 10 to the 8th. That is just under 1 billion. It's 100 million times. So the signal is 100 million times stronger than it needs to be that they're putting along our roads. So the satellites are limited because of their distance, and the power that they can radiate does not even get to the 85 dBm. It's going to be very difficult to talk directly to a satellite from a cell phone, from a cellular type phone. The ones that have been developed so far, you really need to be outside or in a car, in a motor vehicle, in order to use that size device to talk to the satellites. Because the signal will just be not strong enough, not nearly as strong as the minimum on the ground. So the difference between the satellites and what we are currently envisaging with small cells is 100 million to 1. And that's pretty significant. Now, the problem comes about is that even at the strength a cell phone operates or gets a good strong signal for operation, those signals are still strong enough to affect biology. Not very much, but over a period of a lifetime, it significantly adds to the what we call chronic disease load. That's disease that develops decade by decade. Things like the autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, things like that. So that we don't know what the ultimate effect's going to be. Those houses that have got a steel roof, for example, like much of the world, but not California so much, won't be bothered too much. The bedrooms will be well shielded from the satellite rays by the steel roof. Inside a car, similarly, the signals are going to be even lower than the minus 85 dBm. So typically the satellites will be around minus 100 dBm. So as long as the power is kept low, excuse me, it's not going to be a major danger, we don't think. But I've made mistakes before, so I'm being very wary about saying that they're not going to have any biological effect. But I think it's going to be very small, even with the birds and the bees. The danger is going to be to the birds and the bees as they fly through the beams going up from the ground to the satellites. And we know nothing about that at this point.
Yeah, and I'm showing an image of what's happening in outer space with the satellites that are orbiting the Earth, the amount of sky garbage that is showing up. They're planning on being 100,000 of these satellites, and there already are an exorbitant amount of satellites going around the Earth. So there is that issue. But I did want people to know, just to understand a little bit about what you're talking about with these beams going down to the antennas, and these antennas can transfer the information through cables to our schools and to our homes if we insist on it, right? So our job is to be insisting on this internet connection that they want to, have around the world being transferred with cables. Now, so you don't know, for instance, right now, if these antennas from Starlink are intending to talk to the 4/5G small cell facilities. Do you know whether or not there's been a deal sort of set up about that?
I don't believe there's going to be that type of coupling between ground and sky. That was something that I heard, I read somewhere. I haven't seen it sourced on any of the engineering sites that I look at and monitor. I have seen a photo of a receiving device for Starlink that consists of a solar panel to power it, a little box, and the ubiquitous quote-unquote pizza box for the antenna to go up to the satellite, and then a Wi-Fi access point, all mounted as one little unit on the roof. So it doesn't need any connections to a house at all, and uses Wi-Fi to go down into the house. That is not good at all. Wi-Fi radiates many blocks at signal, say 3 or 4 houses in distance, at signals which we know to be unsafe, above the bioinitiative unsafe level.
Yeah, the bioinitiative.
So that we don't want at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have.
And there'll be a push. There'll be a push because it's so easy to use something like that. There'll be a push to try and persuade us to accept that type of technology. But we should recognize that here we have an opportunity to walk back the clock a bit, so that we're no longer so dependent on our 4G masters, as it were, the telcos, for our internet availability. We can get it through wire, and we can get that already. And as we know, there are a very relatively small proportion of our data travels through wire at the moment. They want to make more travel through wireless, which makes no sense at all, because we know that is causing sickness. And so the satellite will give us the ability to walk back a bit, because we won't need to use cell phones in the same way. Certainly if I'm offered a low radiation cell phone so that it communicates only between cell phone and satellite, but it works in every spot anywhere on the Earth, I would say that's pretty attractive.
Okay, so we have some questions. Somebody asked, can trees protect us from the satellite radiation? Some people are concerned that those beams coming, but I want to be clear, the beams are not beaming down all over the Earth. They're beaming down in a specific beam to the antenna. So people are not going to be in between. That beam is not going to be, unless you're flying, right? Or you're not going to get the beam from 10,000 satellites all at once. Right.
They're going to be in different places around the orbit, and you might see the beams from maybe as many as 10 at once, although that is probably an overestimate. But in any case, the beams don't add algebraically. They add in a far more complex way, because they're all using different channels and different frequencies, and those different wavelength photons will interact with our molecules in our body in different ways.
Okay, can you speak to the low Earth satellites versus satellites that are further away?
Well, if you look at a satellite that's in a geostationary orbit, or a television transmitting satellite, for example, you need to receive them with a dish. And you need to receive them with a dish primarily because the signal is so very, very weak. It's only a little bit above thermal noise. The human body puts out radiation. But even gases and buildings and things put out electromagnetic radiation as well, at a level which is called thermal noise or Boltzmann noise. And a scientist several centuries ago called Boltzmann, Boltzmann, worked out all the science which links energy of these photon particles and their temperature, their effective temperature. So everything is putting out noise.
Mm-hmm.
And when you point your antenna at the far galaxies, you're getting the least noise possible.
Okay.
And
I'm
that's why
hearing
they
that.
talk of the sky as being quiet. Sorry.
Okay, so it's better further away. However, we have to on Earth insist that when the transmission comes to Earth, that it's transmitted through cables, not through
Yep.
antennas. We need to work on that. And so somebody asked.
Absolutely.
Somebody
If
asked.
somebody wants to put a transmitter on their roof, then we have to say no. We will not allow that under our local ordinance laws.
Okay, so not on our roof, folks. You heard that? Not on our roof from a professor.
Not on our roof. Yep.
And would it
You
be
can
safe
you can put your equipment, but it has to go into a cable to come down into the house. Now,
Right.
if you want to put it into a Wi-Fi when it's inside the house, that's up to you to wreck your family's life. But don't touch us.
Yeah, and I asked you earlier, is this a problem for this to be beamed down and cables to be brought to a school and then for the cables to be attached to an antenna? Is it a problem for 5G to be in schools?
Yes. Any wireless at all is a problem.
Okay, you said earlier to me it's not a problem, it's a disaster. I want people to hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. It's not a problem, it's a disaster.
Yeah, this is a disaster for children to have 5G in schools, even if the cable goes to the school and then there's an antenna. It's because the antenna is going to be radiating in the school. Would it be safe to say, Professor Marshall, that EMF radiation 4G and 5G makes us more susceptible to viruses because it weakens our immune system?
Okay. Well, I put up a scientific report on my computer before we started, because you mentioned the issue of SARS coronavirus 2, which produces a disease called COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
We think. Don't even know that for sure yet. But everybody says, well, it's possible that this could be related to radio, and then you've got the engineers that stand up and a few physicists, but not quantum physicists, only the old school physicists, stand up and say, oh, there's not enough energy in the photons, microwave photons, to cause a change to the atoms. Well, no, there's not. But, you know, our body isn't consisting primarily of atoms. The atoms are all held together by things called molecules. And the important part of the structure is the molecules. It's the proteins. It's the things that interact in order to sustain life. And the way that the proteins interact is most definitely affected by, and in fact the interactions radiate, electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation is used within the body, possibly along nerves. We don't really know yet, because at the same time as our ability to measure has increased, the electrosmog around us has grown extremely intense, and we can't, and has masked the radiation coming from the human body. We just can't observe it anymore. So we still don't exactly know what's going on, but there are some organisms we can study. You mentioned birds and bees, but there are things called bacteria. And bacteria is a single-cell organism. It is a living organism. It has enough things in it in order to sustain, to take in energy and sustain its life and the life of the colony around it, in a biofilm, for example. And one of those organisms is an organism called E. coli, which is typically, every now and then, contaminates our lettuces, and the lettuces have to be withdrawn from the market because of an E. coli infection. E. coli are fairly prevalent. They're certainly prevalent in the digestion and people. So there was a paper, scientific report out of the magazine called Nature, which is not a small fringe journal in any way. Nature is one of the main ones, actually. And on the 8th of October 2019, there is a scientific report published in Nature which says, global gene expression analysis of E. coli after exposure to 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi router radiation by 4 scientists here from Faculty of Science in Beirut, Lebanon, which doesn't make them any better, well, it probably makes them better scientists actually than many of our own. But this study investigated the effects of Wi-Fi radio frequency radiation on the genes expressed by this E. coli bacterium, because the bacteria are very similar to us. They have DNA and genes, and then those genes are turned into the proteins and other metabolites that sustain the life of the bacterium. And they found that there was one species of bacterium that had 101 genes that were expressed differently when the Wi-Fi signal was present compared with when the Wi-Fi signal was not present. This is done in the lab. It's fully repeatable. And they also tried a number of other types of species. They found that the Staphylococcus does not seem to be so sensitive, but they found that Shigella and Klebsiella and some of the other real nasties are indeed also sensitive and mutated when they're in a radio frequency field.
Okay, wait, so I have to interrupt you. So what you're saying is that this study showed that Wi-Fi had bacteria mutate. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Wi-Fi was enough to cause bacteria to mutate.
Okay,
to mutate 101 genes.
Okay, so could Wi-Fi have caused the coronavirus to mutate into this thing that it is now?
I would be a reckless scientist if I said it couldn't. I don't have any firm proof that it did because I haven't been able to study the virus and run this experiment on the virus.
Right.
They're only just starting to do it on bacteria. There are a number of groups throughout the world. This one is in Beirut. There's one in Iran. Number of groups throughout the world that are working on this. None of them in the US, of course, because you can't get funding for this type of research because everybody just tells you, oh, there couldn't possibly be any interaction. It's conspiracy theory. No, it's not conspiracy theory. It's nature. Okay.
So I want to address one of the things. Somebody's concerned that you are saying that satellites are benign. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
No. I said specifically that I was concerned that I can't say they're benign, but they're the lesser of two evils at this point, most definitely.
Yeah, and it's only because the satellite is 350 miles away versus across, at this end of your driveway, and only if the energy is being transferred by cables when it comes down and not by antenna. If the information is transferred by antenna, this is just as harmful as small cell facilities. Is that safe to say?
Another way of looking at it is to say that when we allowed engineers to create Wi-Fi, there was no interaction whatsoever between biologists or people aware of biology and the people creating the Wi-Fi standards. I know because I was part of the teams creating Wi-Fi. I actually gave lectures on Wi-Fi around the turn of the millennium. Sorry. But we had no input into the way that 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, etc. were made, were designed. We have to make sure that we tell the Starlink people, and we tell our cities to tell the Starlink people, that if they want to put antennas on our rooftops, then they have to be connected by wires, because we are worried about neighbors making their neighbors sick. That's got to stop.
Okay, got it. And yeah, Julie's concerned because there's going to be 1 million of these antenna on the ground, and so I mean that is
well, but that's 1 million over the whole U.S. What they're basically saying is they want to sign up 1 million customers. Every customer that gets signed up is operating a transmitter on their roof going up to the satellite. Now, in the case of Wi-Fi, you don't need to license the transmitter because it operates in a special band of frequencies that's been set aside for Wi-Fi. But in the satellites, you do need a license from the FCC to radiate on those frequencies, and therefore every customer that Starlink signs up will need a license from the FCC. And if the local ordinances so require, a license from the local city council as well to stay within limits. For example, at the moment, our city council here in Thousand Oaks doesn't allow a microwave dish, the dish to point at a TV satellite, for example, greater than 1 meter in diameter. But we'll have to tighten those ordinances up so that if they have transmission capability, that the transmission does not exceed a known safe level.
Okay, yeah, so it does not exceed a known safe level. That is something that everybody needs to write down, and because the known safe level is very, very low, guys, and it's not what the small cell facilities are doing right now. What the small cell facilities are using is millions or 1 billion times higher. So we these known safe levels is a very important phrase to communicate. Okay, so
yeah, I mean, it's a little bit dangerous because we haven't found any level that is 100% safe. But the bioinitiative was a very good study done by a whole lot of people. I've been involved in it, others have been involved in it over the years, and it's a good estimate. We certainly know what is an unsafe level, and that's known for sure. How much lower you have to go to be safe, there's different degrees of safety depending on the individual.
Okay, I just want to show guys, so this, the Safe and Sound Pro 2, he was telling me earlier that it starts measuring at the level, like below what it levels at, it measures at is the bio initiative level is below what this starts measuring at. So when you see anything on this meter that is not considered safe, right? Up to when you get to 10.
It's not considered safe.
Yeah.
Whether it's unsafe and how unsafe it is, that's a lot harder to make a judgment. But 10, the meter has to be not showing at all. 10 is unsafe, yes.
10 is unsafe, 1,000 is extreme, and when I unplug my phone from the hardwire and I turn on the Bluetooth and this thing, it goes up to oh wait, I have to actually use the phone. I have to actually turn something on here.
Yeah, you only have to turn it on.
Yeah, so it's now up to 356,000 is the max.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's at 100, 400. Yeah, it gets up to 2.5 million when you're watching a video. That's what this thing measures.
And it's really, really important that we understand the magnitudes we're talking about. We're talking about millions and billions of differences in size, of over-design, over-engineering, if you like. They didn't have to put the 4G cells in as strongly as they did, but they put them in because they wanted to make sure that people could, in the depths of their house, in their bedrooms, could get a good signal all the time. People demanded that. We didn't realize that by doing that we were disturbing our sleep, disturbing our health, and ruining the whole experience for mankind.
So they want to know if there is a safer, if there is a meter that does measure lower. I think that's you mentioned earlier. There isn't one.
No. It's because I was talking earlier about everything makes noise. Everything radiates noise, and when you're looking at the microwave frequencies, if you look at all the microwave frequencies, the Boltzmann noise constant, in fact, is greater than the safe level. I mean, the body starts to react more sensitively than the meter reacts, if I can put it that way.
Okay. We have to wrap up because we have Mark Graham still needs to talk a little bit about schools and everything. So I just want to capture and get what you said. So what you're saying is that the satellites the power is less because they're further away, and it's our job to make sure that the power, the internet connections and the data and all that is transmitted with cables, not with antenna. If it's transmitted with antenna, we're going to have the same problem we do with the small cell facilities. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have to make sure that they transfer the information from these satellites through cables, not antenna, once it gets to the ground. And the same thing with the small cell facilities. Everybody knows how the power is much higher. But do you know yet if the power coming out of those pizza box antennas on the ground is transferred by antenna, is the power going to be about the same as the small cell facilities, or would it be less?
No, it'll be probably about the same as the Wi-Fi facilities.
Okay.
I would imagine they would make that link not licensed and,
okay,
and
but one thing
using
that you
the
said,
unlicensed Wi-Fi.
One thing that is, yes, and these small cell facilities will be gathering data, folks, which is considerate of surveillance. They will be gathering your information, your data, knowing where you're going, when you're going, what you're buying, what you're not buying. It's all data collection and surveillance. And something that you said that's important is that they want 1 million customers. So I want to put forth the idea out there, just like we did with GMOs. If we don't buy it, they can't sell it. Okay, it is our job to educate our neighbors so that you don't have somebody buying this thing in your house next door and having this being, to be radiating. Facial profiling, I believe, is this. I mean, if they have their way with things, it's coming just like they did in China. This is what they want to do with these small cell facilities and cameras and all that. They want to have smart cities. If you look up smart grids or smart cities, that's what they want to have. So yeah, okay, so we have to move on to Mark Graham is going to talk a little bit about, yep, thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Marshall. We really appreciate it, yeah. So as he says,
thank you, I'll hang up now.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Graham, Dr. Marshall.
Thank you,
so, yeah, thank you. So Dr. Marshall, Trevor Marshall just said that this is not just a problem to have 5Gs in schools, it's a disaster. So Mark is I'm going to unmute Mark, and Mark, you're going to talk a little bit about what to do and how to approach your schools. Is that correct? And then a little bit something about your ordinance.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you for being patient. Appreciate it.
For my total last minute stuff, but I'm gonna.
We can do till 6:15. A lot of times these calls go till 6:15, so we'll just hang in there, everybody. If you can, that would be great.
Okay. Cool. And what I'm going to do is send you this file, the slides that I talked about sending you.
I think you can share right now. You can click underneath, share screen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't stop. We don't seem to be having trolls on right now, so.
Wonderful. All right, then let me bring that up. Hi, everybody. I'm getting it together, I promise. Yeah,
this is Mark Graham. He's from Elk Grove, California, and he worked very hard with a group of people to make sure that they have a much better ordinance than they originally have. And so he's got a lot of experience with that, and he gets on a lot of calls and talks to a lot of people about his experiences and has an email list and all that stuff. So yeah, I appreciate you guys hanging in there for him to talk. There were so many questions for Dr. Marshall that I wanted to get to. And if you didn't get your question answered, by the way, from Dr. Marshall, and I didn't see it, you can still email me at zen@momsacrossamerica.org, and I'll try to get that answered for you. Okay. Okay, you ready, Mark?
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Now,
you want to screen share?
If I do my screen share, let's see what happens. Oh, that's right. I need to find the file.
Yeah, this file needs to be open and on your screen. And then you go to screen share and then you can click on that file. You'll see it open.
All right.
Great.
Do y'all see that?
Yep.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Graham. I live in Elk Grove, which is near Sacramento. And thank you, Zen, so much for having me on this call and giving me a few minutes to talk. Roughly, tell me how much time I have for this.
Well, about 15 minutes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Well, I think it'll be sooner than that or less than that.
Okay.
Well, Zan mentioned that we had a grassroots campaign here, and I want to tell you a little bit about it. And we did end up getting a good ordinance, although it wasn't, it was a battle. The long story short is I started along with two friends of mine a grassroots campaign in early March of 2018 that was intended to fend off basically the assault of the cell antennas in our city. And I had found out that AT&T had filed an application for a zoning code amendment at the end of January that year. And along with that, they had proposed, earlier than that, they had proposed what they call a master license agreement with the city. So this was going to be an agreement between the city of Elk Grove and AT&T. Actually, they're a little shell company. AT&T, they've got lots of assets and they don't want to be on the hook financially for anything. So what they do is they create these little shell companies that have no assets really, and the shell company applies for a permit. It's a very sneaky, it's a legal game. It's intended to keep them from the AT&T, the parent company, from having any liability. But that's a aside. And it was called New Singular Wireless PCS LLC. So that company applied to the city for a code amendment. And the two documents, the code amendment and the master license agreement, were intended to work together, and they were just to grease the skids so that AT&T could get cell antennas, all up and down our city streets, as we've been talking about, as Dr. Marshall talked about, and also Zan's been talking about. And many of you may be facing this, or your city may have already done this. Our goal, when we started this grassroots campaign, was basically to push back as hard and as much as we could against this. And the primary reason, of course, is that it's hazardous to your health. Now, personally, I have a house in Elk Grove. Right in front of my house is a front yard. Right in front of my front yard is a city-owned light pole. And I also have electromagnetic sensitivity, which means I can feel the radiation that comes off of things like cell antennas, cell phones, Wi-Fi, etc. And it gives me a headache, messes with my sleep, and so on. I did not want to have a cell antenna mounted on the light pole right out in front of my house. Okay. And I didn't want that for anybody in our city. Elk Grove is a city of about 170,000 people. So it gives you some idea of the size. And we're about 15 miles or so south of Sacramento.
Okay. So just because of time, I'm going to ask you to get to what were the steps that you took to.
Okay. The number one thing, the main thing that we did, we got as many people writing to the city council as possible to say, please do not do this. Please do not amend the zoning code as AT&T has asked. And our specific request was keep cell antennas away from our Elk Grove homes.
Okay. And what about schools? Why are you showing the school board bylaws?
I'm gonna get to schools in a second. Anyway, and that's the name of the website I created, Keep Cell Antennas Away from Our Elk Grove Homes. And I'm gonna create a page on everything I'm talking about today. There will be a page on my website about it, so you can find that out. And also, I'm going to send this slideshow to Zen, so you can get that. Well, you can get it from my website or from Zen. Okay. All right. And so I call it people power. If you're fighting with this issue in your city, people power, what I mean by that is just get as many people as possible that live in your city to contact your city council and say, keep cell antennas away from our homes. And that is the way to get their attention. And then the question is how to do that. And that's another subject, and I will just touch on the one key thing about how to do that. It's 90% of the battle, and that is the city really does have regulatory power over cell antennas. It's partially preempted by Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And what happens in many cases is the city attorney tells the city council, we can't do anything about, to protect people's health.
Mhm.
That is not true. That is incorrect as a matter of law, and any city attorney who tells his city council that is just violating the code of professional conduct for attorneys. And what they're doing is they're paving the way for the city council to give the telecom companies everything they want and to, nail the residents with these hazardous antennas right up in front of your homes. So, and when I say that's 90% of the battle, that's what I know from, retrospectively. I didn't know that going in. And how that works is you can spend all your time talking to them about health effects, scientific research, what it does to your DNA. RF exposure causes cancer. It disrupts the immune system, the endocrine system, the nervous system. It suppresses your melatonin, all this stuff. But if the council has been programmed by the city attorney, or that's usually who it is, or maybe some attorney that they've hired to believe that they cannot regulate in this area, like the area of health, which is what happened here, they will not listen to you. They will not listen to what the residents are telling them. It's like talk to the hand, So that, and they won't listen to any recommendations, any specifics that you give them as to how to keep cell antennas away from their homes. So it's essential. It's essential, and it's worth spending all the time on it that it takes. And I can talk more about that on some other day, but not today. What happened in Elk Grove was, ironically, the council, on the day that they voted on this, which was August of last year, August 28th, they believed, because the city attorney had told them this in writing and verbally, that they could not regulate in this area. And what he meant by that was the area of health or health effects. And despite that, they did that. And how they did it in Elk Grove is they said, and it's written into our zoning code now, we're not going to permit a cell immediately adjacent to a residential front yard, or more specifically, immediately adjacent to or across the street from the front yard of any residential dwelling. That's how our city council kept cell antennas away from most of the homes in Elk Grove. So
That's
they did
great.
what the city attorney told them they could not. All right, now schools. You may be interested in knowing how that part of the California Education Code actually gives you a way to get on the agenda of a school board meeting and to get some significant time to talk to them. If you've ever attended a school board meeting and you want to speak during public comments, you can do that, and they'll give you 3 minutes usually. And when your 3 minutes are over, they interrupt you and you're done. But what I want to tell you is that, and nowadays a lot of the school board meetings they're either not happening or they're happening virtually. They'll have a school board meeting online, and what I'm about to tell you can work for an in-person school board meeting, which eventually we'll get back to those, or a virtual school board meeting. But I'm going to show you a way using the California Education Code and the board bylaws of your school board that you can get on the agenda for a lot more than 3 minutes. So it's like I was saying, the California Education Code and the corresponding school board bylaw gives us a way to do this. And this little slide thing explains how. You may ask, why do I want to talk to the school board? It's not only the Wi-Fi issue, which they need. So many school districts have already put Wi-Fi in all the schools. It's a complete health hazard, and they really should have never done it. And what they should do now is replace them with hardwired internet access.
Yeah,
now that may be
we're clear about that. Keep going.
It's an excellent idea, but it's a tough sell, because they've already invested millions of dollars in Wi-Fi. But the other reason is that some of the school districts and it's the telecom companies, AT&T and Verizon and Cisco and so on, are using the opportunity that they have now with the schools closure due to the quarantine to install a bunch of high-tech equipment in the schools while the schools are closed. And in fact, on March 19th, Governor Newsom wrote to the Congress, 4 leaders of Congress, and he asked for money from Congress to do a whole long list of things. And a couple of the things that he specifically said he wanted to do with that new money was to expand tech in schools and broadband specifically.
Yes, and it's not just Governor Newsom, but across the country. Trump has approved H.893, which is Secure 5G and Beyond, and is giving $9 billion to telecom companies to expand their wireless technology. And it does prioritize wireless technology, but it does, I checked with the lawyers, it doesn't mean that it can't be wired. So they can use the money for wired, but it prioritizes wireless. So you're going to have to educate your school board that this is why it's so important. Go to your school board about why you want wired, not wireless.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for all that background. I didn't even know that. So it's a bigger problem. It's not just California.
Yep.
Now, what I'm going to present is state law here in California and the school board bylaws and that school districts here in California mostly have. If you're in another state, I don't know. I don't know what the law says there, but there might be something comparable to this in your state law, in your education code. All I know is this is what's in California. So can you see the slide? It says California Education Code, section 35154.
Yes.
Okay, good. There it is. That it's the intent of the legislature that members of the public be able to place matters directly related to school district business on the agenda of school district governing board meetings. That is empowering residents to get on the agenda. Notice that it does not specifically say parents of children that are in the schools, it says members of the public. Now, I don't have any children, and I used this back in July of 2016. I requested time on the agenda of our school board meeting at the time, and they gave me 17 minutes to do a presentation with slides.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying you can do.
Did they ask, did they ask you questions afterwards too? Were you able to answer questions?
They did not ask a single question. They were completely uninterested. They it's like I might as well have been talking Greek to them. And I had a couple meetings with the superintendent. I mean, they don't respect the issue. They didn't really respect me. I mean, they gave me time on the agenda because they had to, because I sort of wedged my way into it. But,
right.
All I can say is every school board is different, and there may be your school board in your city may be more open-minded than the one that we have here. I don't know, hopefully. Now, there's something called the California School Board Association, and they publish a set of bylaws, policies and bylaws that every school board can adopt as is, or that they can modify them. You may know that there are about 1,000 different school districts in California. This is the corresponding board bylaw. It's kind of long. I hate reading slides, but anyway, at a time so designated on the agenda, members of the public may bring to the board at a regular meeting matters that are not listed on the agenda. And then it says the matter may be placed on the agenda of a subsequent meeting for action or discussion by the board. That's what happened here in Elk Grove after I made the request, and I made it in writing, and
Okay, I have a question about this. So you did not find it to be very effective to go up and speak about this issue for 17 minutes, but would it have been effective, do you think, to have other people also request the same thing, or do they only allow one person to speak for 17 minutes about this particular topic?
Well, the amount of time is really up to the discretion of the school board. I mean, you may ask for this and get 15, you may ask for this and get 20.
Okay, but would they allow multiple people to have 15 or 20 minutes each, or are they only allowing one person per topic?
I think that this would be one person, but because it's an agenda item, everybody in the audience can do their public comments for, again, 3 minutes on that agenda item.
Okay, so if you want to organize this in your town, I would urge you to have somebody be the presenter that is, and nothing against you, Mark, but from what I've been hearing from lawyers, have them be either a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer or a scientist or a nurse, somebody with some street cred that they will listen to in a way that might open their ears a little bit more. So I would have the main presenter be an expert, and
right.
Then have the people who are getting up and speaking for 3 minutes coordinate their comments such that, I mean, you are like, what we're working on right now is writing out each one of the top 10 points or top 12 points so that each person has 2 minutes. They can add on another minute of their own personal story. But each person is covering a different topic. One of the city council meetings that I went to, 3 people talked about the notifications of people who lived within 1,000 feet of the you know, of the cell, you know, the small cell facility, and complained about how it wasn't enough time or it wasn't further apart. That was valuable time that could have been taken up, you know, discussed about a different topic. So I just want to impress upon everyone, I'm sorry to interrupt your presentation here, but you really need to coordinate so that everybody is touching on a different topic. And we have top 10 talking points on momsacrossamerica.org under action, stop 5G grids. However, there are a lot of websites that have a lot of information, and feel free to use other people's too.
I agree with everything you just said, Zen, and that is excellent, you know, planning. It's definitely good to coordinate, good to have somebody, you know, good to have other people speak up. And definitely if you can get, like if Dr. Marshall were to make the presentation, yes, he's a lot more accomplished. He's got experience and degrees and qualifications. I'm an advocate, but I don't have a PhD in anything. So, and I'm not an attorney. I don't practice law, but I know an awful lot about the law in this area. So totally, credibility makes a big difference. And the other thing I wanted to say is, anytime that there's an item on the agenda, somebody in the audience, anybody in the audience can do public comments on that agenda item. And let's say it's 3 minutes, because that's what it is here in Elk Grove, and it's a lot of different places. In addition, there's always a room on the agenda for public comments on items that are not on the agenda. Does that make sense? And it applies at every city council meeting too. So when you go down to your city council meeting, even if 5G is not on the agenda, you're able to do public comments about it because it's within the jurisdiction of the city council. And it's the same sort of thing here with the school board. So when you go to the school board meeting, when this is happening, your comments about this agenda item, you know, should be specifically about this, but you could tackle the broader question of EMF health effects or something like that. That's not on the agenda. You get 3 minutes for that too.
Right.
And the last slide here is contact information. That's my email address and website. So it's a tool that you can use. I don't think it's used very often, but then again, I don't know. And the other things then I would say in answer to your question, why you want to talk to the school board is, and I had this on my slide up there, is a lot of times parents and teachers attend school board meetings. So that's who you're reaching. That's part of your audience. There it is. Some parents and teachers watch or attend school board meetings. Now, it would be great, in addition to this, if you could have an audience with your local teachers union. And I'm not even going to get into that, but
that's a good idea, though. I had not thought of that. Yeah. And so when you're speaking in front of the school board, these are being recorded and they could be watched by teachers, and you could get a teacher on your side that you could then partner with at your local school. That's what you're saying, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So get a teacher on your side, get the local teachers union on your side, and then there's the PTA, Parent Teachers Association, right? And I'm not even going to get into that either, but a lot of times some of the PTA members, or maybe the leaders of the PTA, are either they're watching or they're attending the school board meeting, so they'll see your presentation as well. And you know, if you make your contact information available during your presentation, you give them a way to contact you, and you invite it. You could say specifically, if you're a teacher in the school district, or you're a parent of a child in the school district, and you're watching this, listening to this, and you're interested, please contact me. You know, my name is Mark Graham. This is my email address, my website, and you never know, because it only takes one really to get started, and then every teacher knows all the other teachers.
Yes, and just to add in, if you do this type of presentation at your city council, they record them, and they're all in archives, and you can look up. There's many websites that have of the city council meetings have been recorded, and you can watch other people doing presentations on the same exact subject.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So thank you, Mark. Does anybody have any questions for Mark before we go? It's already 6:20. We went over. I really appreciate everybody being patient, but as you can see, this is a very complicated subject. There's a lot of questions. Has anybody ever gone door to door to share this information in their village? Yes, I have. Once I found out, I asked my, so yeah, write down Mark's email, because I'm not sending this out to people. Write down his email if you want to have questions. But one thing to do is to email your city commissioners or your city council and ask them, what are the addresses of the current or pending locations of any small cell wireless telecommunication facilities. You don't want to say 5G because they'll say, oh, we're not planning any 5G, because what they're
Right.
doing is planning 4G first, and then they'll upgrade it to 5G. So you have to say small cell wireless telecommunications facilities. What are the addresses, the locations of the current and pending ones? Then they will have to respond to you with those addresses and locations. I got the two that were the applications that are out, and a map of the 15 pending. And the 15 pending, they wouldn't give me the addresses because they're not applications, but I zoomed into Google Maps and found the approximate location, and then took the flyers from the 5G Crisis Toolkit, and I changed them a little bit. I added an image of the Germantown, Maryland. There's an image, if you look that up on ehtrust.org, it shows where there are 70 small cell facilities installed or planned to be installed in one neighborhood. One neighborhood, folks, 70 of them.
Wow.
So I took that image to show this is what our neighborhood's gonna look like, right? And I also included the image of the map of the 15. I said, this is just the start. This is what it's gonna look like if we don't show up at our city council meeting, right? And so I took that flyer and I got 2 other volunteers to help me, and we split up and we went to 4 or 5 locations each. And we passed out flyers in that neighborhood and asked one person from each location, will you make 40 copies of this or 60 copies and pass it out door to door to your neighbors, right? So we employed other people to do this. And so those are gonna be the people that are gonna be your main allies, are the people where you know that address is going in. And what happened was a postman was driving by me, and I just said to him, hey, do you know about this small 5G thing? And he's like, I heard about it. I said, yeah, there's going to be a pole right outside your post office, right off of, and I gave him the address. And he said, do you have a couple of those? I'm going to give it to my postmaster. And guess what? They're moving the location. So that has been delayed already by a month or 2. They're looking at different locations. The Postal Service do not want a small cell facility, near them. And no, they're not all over fire stations, actually. Whoever LPR is, the International Fire Association has put a moratorium on small cell facilities, and they actually got in California a bill that says it will not be allowed to be on fire stations. So if we're protecting our firefighters, why wouldn't we be protecting our children? That is a very important question to ask your school board and your city council members, that if the International IFFA, International Firefighters Association, does not allow these to be on their facility. And you know why? Because there was one put on, I think it was 2 different facilities, I think one in San Francisco and one in LA. And the firefighters got headaches. They got tinnitus. They had ringing in their ears. They got confused. They started to lose their way. They actually forgot where to go. It affected their brains. And so they put in a moratorium on them to not be installed in firefighters agencies. And one of my city commissioners actually even asked the applicant, so if these are so important for communication, why not put them on a firefighter station, right? And the applicant wouldn't answer that question. He just said, oh, our people, decided that this other public right-of-way location would be better. But that's why. And he wanted to get him to say that there's been a moratorium. But so we brought that up. So are you speaking about firefighter agents? Are you speaking about firefighter? No, not specifically in my town. This is International Firefighters Association has put a moratorium on putting any small cell facilities or any wireless telecommunication facilities, so macro or small cell, on their facilities. That is what's happened. So if they're doing it, why not us? And Nancy's asking, what about NEPA review? Yeah, we can't go through everything tonight. I'm sorry, we have to get off, but all of these cities should be requiring a NEPA review, which is the National Environmental Protections Act, and they are not doing that. So that's another way to say, hey, you need to halt this. You need to go back to the drawing board and get the NEPA review. Now, some lawyers are saying they don't need to have it. Other lawyers are saying they do need to have it. There is a lawsuit out now. I think it's Thousand Oaks that have sued because they didn't do a NEPA review. There's also Simi Valley is suing because, I think it's Siemens Valley. There's a lot of different cities suing, because the levels of the small cell facility on the poles was higher than what the FCC allowed. And do you remember the chart I showed you earlier? It's already what they allow is 5 billion times more than what is needed for our cell phones to work. And so the power coming out exceeded that amount, and they are suing. And there's other cities that are suing because they're sitting the city council members directly because of harm. And I want to address this before we go. This could be a game changer, folks. This is really important. I hope you listened to my podcast this morning. If you did, this is a repeat. But what we found out on the lawyers meeting last week with 5G Free California was that the lawyer said that if this telecom company does sue your city for denying an application, which is they're being told, oh, we can't deny an application, our hands are tied because we have to, the FCC laws, right? So they're afraid of this lawsuit from the telecom companies, right? Well, guess what? The telecom companies can only sue for the permit. They can't sue for any money. They can't sue for harm or damages or nada, nothing. They can only sue for the permit, meaning for it to be approved and for them to be able to put up their stupid cell, the small cell facility, which, by the way, we can turn off. We can turn these off. This has been done in Huntington Beach. A woman who lived 65 feet from one of these things, her skin was burning when she went to sleep, the skin facing the side of the pole. She had to sleep under an aluminum screen at night. She bugged the mayor for 3 months and while she slept under that screen and got the mayor to turn it off. So we can get these things turned off. We do have power over operation, and we need to absolutely communicate that if they try to sue us, so what? They're going to sue us just for the permit thing. And then guess what? If we do have to put them up, we can turn them off. But if you approve these and you allow hundreds of these to be put up all over the place, guess what's going to happen? Brain cancer, tinnitus, headaches, confusion, brain fog. Residents are going to be suing you. And those lawsuits are way more than what the telecom company, the threat of the telecom company. Look at Monsanto, $2 billion awarded to the Pilioid couple for voluntarily purchasing Roundup and using it in their backyard, voluntarily, right? But they won because it contributed to their non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because the package wasn't labeled. Well, what happens when we are forced to be subjected to electromagnetic frequency, this microwave radiation from a pole 12 feet outside of our house, right? We have even greater grounds of suing for way more money because it's nonstop. We don't have a choice. We can't turn it off. Our kids are getting sick. We're getting sick. It's massive grounds for a lawsuit, and these lawsuits are going to happen. So we can do this, folks. And I hope you took away from this that the satellites are a problem. Okay, this guy did not say they're not a problem, but they are especially a problem if we don't on the ground make sure that the information is transferred by cables and not by antenna. If the information is transferred by antenna, of course, a million more antennas is a major problem. But if it's transferred by cables, it will be safer for us. It won't be safer for the birds and the bees. Remember, he said that is a problem for the birds and the bees and anything that's migrating. Yes, this call always goes on Moms Across America under events. We have a Moms Connect call page, and I will be putting this up there, and we will be having information under Moms Across America under action, Stop 5G Grids. I encourage you to talk about the grids because when you say just 5G, they're going to think, oh, T-Mobile already has 5G. It's too late. People don't get what you're saying. So you really got to talk about the 5G grids or the Internet of Things, whatever language you want to use. It's that whole infrastructure of your refrigerator, talking to your phone, talking to the pharmacy, talking to your car. That's what they want to have, okay? And the whole point of that is to gather our data so that they can make money. Let's be real. That's the whole point of this. They want to make money. Now, if you want to add into it that they're trying to survey us, to control us and kill us and use it as a weapons, you can add all that stuff into it if you want to. I personally, I don't want to go there right now. Okay. I don't care. I think they're just being plain old greedy. They want our information. They want to sell more stuff to us. They want to remind us to get our medication when we go past the pharmacy, and they want our data. Our data is the most important thing to these telecom companies and big tech companies around the world. They want to know what we're doing, what we're buying, what we're, all of that stuff. So however, in China, they are using surveillance. They are using it to control people. They are using it to punish people. They are telling people they can't travel if they don't pay their bills and all that. And there's facial recognition. There's all of that stuff going on. So that's where we're headed if we don't speak up about this now. And in police stations, I don't know if they have small cell facilities on police stations, but we do know they have them on school grounds. And we do know that they're being installed right now in schools. They're putting cable down and then they're putting an antenna. So it has been confirmed that it is happening in schools now. So get on the stick, folks. Email your schools right now and ask them, are any small cell wireless facilities being installed during this break? Are there any upgrades to wireless happening during this break? If so, I want to know about it. And then you're going to have to take steps to, rally your teachers. I mean, the teachers and the parents, get a petition going, ask for a meeting, all of that stuff. And I'm sorry, it's a huge pain in the butt, but it has to be us. There's nobody else that's going to do this for us. And if you speak up, you can stop it. Absolutely. It has happened. And we know people that have done it. So,
hey, Zen.
yes.
Do you recommend, like, for the people wanting to contact their schools, to start with the school superintendent, the school board?
No, I would call and ask who's the person that handles the technology, and email them and get that in writing, whatever that is, because they're going to know more. They're going to be able to answer you better. You can go to the head of the school, that's fine, but they're usually going to defer you to the person who's in charge of the technology, because some of them don't even know what you're talking about when you say small cells or, whatever. So
yeah, I wrote to the superintendent, but
I was suggested to go to the superintendent of the school district as well. So not just your school principal, but the superintendent of your school district. And then you ask, are there any small cell facilities or upgrades to any wireless technology happening in our district? And if so, which schools and which type of technology, what changes? And I got confirmation back from both of my school districts that it's not happening right now, but I'm going to email them again and say, if there are any changes, I'm requesting to be informed, just like a parent requesting to be informed if pesticides are being sprayed on their school, right, grounds. You have a legal right to be notified if pesticides are going to be sprayed on your kid's school grounds. They have to tell you. They put you on a list and they have to inform you before that happens. So you can ask them to be put on a list and to be informed. And the next thing that one of the next things I want to do is I'm going to take this meter and I'm going to go to my kid's school and I'm going to videotape and I'm going to check it out. What are the levels when school's not in action, and what are the levels once they go back in action? And I'm going to be broadcasting these videos. I did one. I put it on Twitter with your microwave. It maxed out 2.5 million. Your microwave. Do not use your microwave. Yeah, thank you, Chloe. Do not use a microwave. I only have one in my house because the former owner had one. At my other house, we didn't have one. So don't use it. Yes, this has sound. You can turn this up and it is a really awful sound, but when you record it, it's effective because people can hear it. So in my office right now, I'm less than 4, which is microwatts, which is good. You want to be less than 10. And that's because my laptop and my phones are hardwired. So get a shielded Ethernet cord and plug it into your router and then turn your Wi-Fi off. Not as convenient because you got to have these little Ethernet cords in different places of your house, but it does eliminate a major, huge, 2.5 million versus 4, right? It's a major thing. The shielded Ethernet cords you can buy on Amazon. You can buy them on a lot of places online. Just look up shielded Ethernet, E-T-H-E-R, net cord. And yes, do not have fear. This is your LPR, whoever you are. There's no reason to have fear about this. This is your life, your kids, your school, and you can do something about this. And you can get started just by, experts hardwiring the house. My husband's not an expert, but he bought the cord. You plug it. You can see the little pluggy thing. I don't want to unplug it right now, but it's just the plug like a phone jack, and you just plug it right into your router. And then you take that cord. You can buy one that are like 300 feet and just run it around your house, put it on the carpet or whatever. Some people pay people to put it through the walls, and then you plug it into your laptop. So you buy
you'll have to buy an adapter for most laptops, especially the newer ones.
Yes, you buy an adapter for your laptop and for your phone. There's a particular adapter for your phones. But in all, I think it cost $40, and it took my husband about an hour, maybe 2, to run the cords around the house. And I am now sleeping between 10 and 11 at night, and I wake up automatically around 6:30 or 7 in the morning with no alarm. I have no alarm clock in my house, in my bedroom. I have no laptop, no phone. I sleep so much better. And yeah, it's awesome. So no, you can turn off the Wi-Fi from your router, but that's a little tricky. I'm going to have to ask my husband about that, because when you call the company, they don't want to do it. They do not want you turning off your Wi-Fi.
I unplug it.
Oh, you can unplug it. Yeah, but it wears it down after time. I'll ask my husband about that. There's a particular way to turn off your Wi-Fi. You can do it yourself. You can also go out and just buy a new router and plug that in and not use the one that your phone company gave you, because your phone company doesn't want you to turn off your Wi-Fi. You have to be a little bit technically minded to be able to turn that off. And so you can shut it off, you can, unplug it. You can, there's something on the router that allows you to turn it off. So, yeah. Okay.
Then this is can I show people? This is
sure.
an Ethernet cable, that what you're talking about.
Great. Yeah.
And that is the plug. I don't know if you can see it. It's close up of the plug. It's slightly different from the type of plug that would plug in for a telephone, but that's an Ethernet cable, and this is how you do. This is what you must be using. This is what I use.
Yep.
This is how you have internet access without Wi-Fi, whether it's in your home or your office, with one of these.
And phone calls. I get phone calls right through this, and text and email and all that stuff. Yep.
Cool.
So you just got to make sure when you turn it, because when you turn it off to airplane mode, it'll automatically go to Bluetooth. It'll automatically be looking for something. By the way, Bluetooth is horrible, guys. If your kids have those earbuds, you are sticking a microwave. They're sticking a microwave in their brain with no skull to their brain. Those earbuds are the worst thing. You have got to get rid of those earbuds. Okay, just use a corded earbuds. That's it, or big honking headphones. Okay, I gotta go, but I love seeing you guys. I really appreciate you being here. That was really good information from this guy, right? From Trevor. I know scientists are it's challenging sometimes to pull out of them the information but I think he really knows his stuff. And if you go to his website, you can see his talk. I was just watching his talk, which was really good, about electrosmog. If you type in, hang on, let me just screen share real quick, and then you can go if you want to watch more from what he showed. It's electrosmog radiation and effects on VDR. And so he does talks all over the place. And if you want to see more, that talk is pretty good, and you might want to, share the link with somebody on that. Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, Stacy, your first call. So glad to have you. Thank you, Hillary and Chloe and Lisa and Elaine and everybody. Susie, thank you, Anne. Appreciate you being on, Max. Take care. Bye, guys. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate your time. Take care.